Good evening and welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Tonight we have Brian on. Brian has been in like a ton of bands. You may know him from Dresden Dolls, Nine Inch Nails, Violent Femmes. He plays a billion instruments. If you go to his YouTube page, he's playing everything he has hands on. He's a very strong creative force. So we're going to touch base with him and see what's going on. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to have you. I've been enjoying your work through many of your projects over the years, so it's nice to sit down and have a talk with you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a lovely way to spend this Tuesday morning here in LA with you.
One of my favorite things about you is you are very, very creative. Like it feels like you're not just like in every band because you can't keep a job. You work on these different projects and you keep moving, and like the challenge for you to play different instruments has got to be something that fuels you, right? Like, for instance, Violent Femmes, you're playing on a simple drum set, and then Dresden Dolls is a little bit more, but then it's more theater and you're singing more, and then with Nine Inch Nails, you're creating your own like there's never the simple kit, 4/4 thing.
Yeah, that's true. So, and you're kind of wondering like, where does that come from for me, or why the inclination to sort of seek out more diverse, sometimes maybe challenging or left to center kind of projects as opposed to just the kind of like, four on the floor timekeeper kind of gig. I don't know. I guess it comes from, as a young kid, maybe having a kind of an interest or been in things that were, more sort of animated or theatrical in certain kind of ways, definitely being a big, Warner Brothers cartoon fan and Disney fan and Muppet fan when I was like 4 or 5, 6 years old, that has like, that sort of, and maybe even sort of, WWF wrestling and BMX bikes and like all the stuff that, like you look at and you go like, damn, this is like this larger than life kind of like fantastical, amazing world that, as you grow older and, mature and, you sort of find yourself in your own interests as a teenager and a young adult and whatever, and you're carving out more of like, maybe if you have like a deeper artistic pursuit and, a desire to express these things. Yeah, I found that like music that incorporates some of those more wildly creative and performative elements. That's very much where I come from, and what I looked up to when I was a kid. Even like in my most impressionable years growing up in the late '80s, I was surrounded by performance rock. It was like not this like underplayed, shy wallflower shoegaze. I'll just stare at the floor while I do my thing. Whatever. It was like people jumping and leaping and, looking like they're just having the time of their lives, drummers included, and especially drummers that my father introduced me to, John Bonham and Keith Moon and Mitch Mitchell and Corky Lang and, all the, amazing drummers of that era of music that he grew up listening to. That was like highly performative music. And yeah, and I guess I have a pretty eclectic taste in music too. My path of the things that have attracted me musically, like, whether it's one week I'm listening to doing some deep dive on Hank Williams and the next week it's like, calypso music. And then the next week it's like Mozart opera, you never really quite know. And I've heard a lot of other people say this too, that there's some higher thing that oftentimes drives your creative pathway and things like that. But it's always been for me related to something that I want to learn and apply to my playing, or something that I feel that I can learn that'll catch my interest. So that leads me in a lot of different ways, very directly with the groups that I work with. Do you know what I mean? If I had a more narrow, I just like to keep time and play 4 on the floor and just kind of be in the background on that side. But I love to get my hands dirty and get the dirt like under my fingernails with projects too. Everything from the songwriting and the production, right up through the stage show and the aesthetic of the bands and stuff that I work with too. So that's always been attractive too. Bands that really create their own world and something that I can see myself really being a part of.
That's kind of a treat because I think, and like you watch the fans generation, I'm 50. So like, I'm a big fan of the 60s and 70s performance rock and stuff. And during the shoegaze time, there's some good artists, but there was an energy, there was something that was missing, and how that reflects upon kids that grew up at the time. We'll see. Hopefully, I think some actually have gone back now to the others,
Yeah, well, things always have this kind of like pendulum kind of like effect too, where it's,
every 10, 12 years, something drops out of the bottom. But like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they were still knocking it differently. It's just like the
Mm-hmm.
90s went totally crazy for rock.
Completely,
But
you know.
but what's interesting is a lot of artists want to do a lot of different things. When you talk to them, even if they're in like what you think be a normal band, they just get locked into that situation. A lot of fans are only into like, your family. You might have somebody that's, I only like you in the Dresden Dolls, or I only like you when you do this.
Mm-hmm.
But most artists are like, I like everything,
Yeah,
or
right.
like I like, that's how you are. Like I know that's how I am. It's like I listen to like, my phone has every group on. Like it's ridiculous, and the more
Yeah.
diverse it is, the better it is. In fact, it's so different. I
Yeah.
don't have to listen to sometimes because I don't know what mood I'm in. It's almost overwhelming. I wish I could be boring.
Well, you hit it on the head, right? There's the artwork that we seek out. Oftentimes we're multifaceted creatures. So we're going to have a lot of different sides to us that respond to different types of music and art and stimulus in that kind of way. So if I'm lucky enough to be in the position where I get to actually work with people who I find, very creatively stimulating, that's going to lead me in a lot of directions too. And I could very easily have kind of pigeonholed myself too and been like the punk cabaret guy that just plays with kind of like
Mm-hmm.
quirky,
But you could have done it. You
mime
could have done
looking
it right.
bands or
You could have
something
done
like
a
that
certain
too.
thing, but because you diversified at the time, like there's a lot of other artists that are fantastic. So there's a certain
Yeah.
rock guy, but they're like, oh, they feel like, oh, I really like to do a funk album. I really like this. You're like, no, you're the rock guy that does, this.
Yeah.
You so much garbage. They could probably they can't do it, but there's a certain like built-in legacy
Yeah.
from the beginning of you. You're just kind of like a tree where it's like the branches are everywhere.
Well, it's
And,
not
and
everywhere.
there's
It's
no
in the very specific branches that are meaningful to me, which
no. But I'm
there
saying
are
if the
many, but
branches are
yeah.
out, like they're out, like your branches are out
Right.
to so many places
Yeah.
that it's hard to
Ex-
pigeonhole you and be like, well, that's his sound. Is what I'm
yeah.
saying. Whereas some
Yeah.
bands just have like it's like a pole, like a utility pole, like they're a
Right.
rock band. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Whereas you've got
totally.
a lot of avenues to choose from without being locked in.
Yeah, for sure. And like in a third variation of that I've seen is that there's like the tree with the many branches that are just sort of like, the drummers who are like rock, pop, jazz, and Latin. Like, you know what I mean? Like whatever that
Like a
when like the
cross.
best falls. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of
Yeah.
like where it's this kind of like it's so undefined in such a general application. For me, it's like there's kind of like this sort of 3 or 4 maybe like main branches for me where there's definitely the kind of like performative streak, whether that is like more aligned with the kind of Dresden Dolls and performance rock kind of oriented and cabaret theatrical kind of thing. Then there's definitely like the kind of punk and metal side to me, which was a huge part of my growing up as a kid. And then definitely like the kind of jazz and improvisational element, that's a really crucial component to any kind of collaboration or band that I'm in, is that there's that element of freedom within the group, in particular in a live situation, to really sort of stretch out and spread and be creative and make the most of the moment. Do you know what I mean? So it's like those are kind of like the qualities, and you could maybe even say like a fourth branch of that would be, to me, an artist that likes to really speak their message through, to me, what sounds like a very kind of unique and unorthodox take on the music, rather than people that kind of like just want to do a kind of cookie cutter, sort of safe, easily branded kind of marketable thing. I like people with a very adventurous spirit and adventurous attitude towards their art. So those are kind of like the 5 main qualities.
Right. It's definitely, put you in a spot where you could have made yourself more commercial off of some of the artists you've done during certain times too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an artistic choice you've taken. You definitely follow your muse.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that, because there were opportunities that came up, especially in the time when I was, very closely connected with Roadrunner Records when the Dolls were kind of at their height, where like when I left Dresden Dolls, there were a few bands where, A&R people came my way and they, hey, these guys are looking for a drummer, these guys. And it was really, I gave it the college try, but I was just like, this is not music that I relate to. And yes, this band is technically huge. And I only have made that mistake once, where I took a gig just because it was like a gig and I wanted to work, and the music didn't particularly like turn me on that much, but I was like, well, it's okay. And there's like this and this and this about it. And I found that for myself, and I've met plenty of like just session people that are like, doesn't make any difference to me, man. Just give me the guitar or the stage and I'm like, I'm good to go. I don't care. Whatever y'all want to do is fine with me. And I'm way too invested to feel like that. And I tried and just found that I was like not ever going to be happy creatively in this particular capacity. Super nice people, very fun tours, what have you. But I was just like, I have to stick to what really feels right and true. And it gives me a sense of connection creatively and artistically, not just to the people, but to the music itself and what it's expressing. Otherwise, I'd rather work with a lot of sort of smaller groups and up and comers than just try to go for the big kind of thing like that. And I consider myself extremely lucky that I think 99% of the projects I've been involved with have been that. So it's a good situation.
It's really interesting. When you've approached them, clearly, and that's sometimes the point is like when you came and they say, all right, you did Dresden Dolls for a little bit and we'll go back and forth. I don't really have a format. And then you use a smaller kit, you singing, and then they're like, all right, come on in and do, I'm skipping probably the timeline around, but you're like the Violent Femmes, which is a very stripped down sound.
Yeah.
It's very much of a different, before it's like you and Amanda, you got a family, you got your relationships up and down, but it's a dynamic. Now you're kind of you're doing like a new family. It's like instead of doing like big rock bands you come into bigger rock bands, you're almost coming into like small family businesses, which has its own hairy dynamic. I'm not saying Violent Femmes by any means, but when you work for small,
there's plenty of dynamics to play in every group like that.
To work for.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're the new kid a lot coming in with you've got your own, supernova creativity coming in. So it's always got to be a challenge to drive you to join this. What kind of freedom are you having coming into these projects? Are they like, they know who they got? Are they bringing you in? I would say in a general sense, people decide to want to ask me to collaborate with them because of certain pretty obvious qualities, my sort of energy and exuberance and, willingness to participate in a group context, probably being one of the main ones, aside from, the fact that maybe they like how I play and certain things and what I, demonstrate in their opinion, on stage or in the studio and stuff like that. I like to be really hands-on with the people that I work with, but in the case of Violent Femmes, that was also like a very specific context to come into. Both. Because it made sense on paper, though, because if you look at
100%.
You're one of the few people that play a huge drum sound on a smaller setup. And and be creative in that energy in that genre. So on a small short list, you'd be somebody,
Well, yeah. And it was fortunate too, because, I was a huge fan of that group growing up and that music was certainly in my DNA, right, yeah. But it was also really interesting. There were a lot of really exciting challenges across the board. The first obviously being in that playing on that very unorthodox kind of like drum setup, which is a whole history as to why that setup is the way it is, which we don't need to go in depth now. But they did arrive at that more minimal setup, which was cool. It gave the band an incredibly distinctive character. And so that's what I came in to basically continue that legacy of what Victor De Lorenzo so beautifully started with both Brian and Gordon. And I was able to kind of lend my sort of like minor sort of additions to the setup of that, playing with only the snare drum, what they called the transophone, which was a 14-inch floor tom with an inverted metal bushel basket placed over it to be used as sort of like that, like a hi-hat, and and the sort of like ribbed edge could be used because I get this kind of weird raking percussive kind of sound, and obviously playing with metal brushes on the thing gave it a really just unique kind of character. And then I had a 16-inch floor tom.
Calypso actually has a lot of that Calypso tool into it.
Yes, found folk art music and a couple of cymbals and a little tambourine and stuff like that too. But then being so used to having my foot to really drive the downbeat on the kick drum, so then I was working with John Sparrow, who was playing cajon. And he was really the downbeat. And I remember it was like that was a very, interesting time, because let's just say there was one dynamic before I was in the band with John that maybe put him a little bit more in a feeling of uncertainty with his place within the group. And when I joined, I was like, come on, man, we're a section now. Let's do this, saddle up. Cause like I need you and we're going to fucking work together on this. And so that was great. And that opened up, there's a whole drum solo section in the song Black Girls that John and I would sort of trade off with. And I love it. I'm not the kind of person where it's like, wait, step back. It's my time. where's the spotlight? Like, I love to be part of a group. So to play with another percussionist, that was both really exciting and totally new for me in a lot of ways, to do like, you know, several years of touring like that. And then to have like a whole different array of sounds and approach how I'm going to perform. And like you said, get the same energy and punch without having the main component of that kicking, you know, bass drum to drop those bombs with too. So it's like you're really working sort of symbiotically with another person within that group to really form that mind meld and sort of be with each other. But I love that. It's exactly what I love to do with Amanda in Dresden Dolls too, is to form that sort of group cohesion. So that was a great chance to do that.
That is a super thing, because it really shows how you are as a drummer. And like an outside rock reference to other people watching would be like, the challenge of coming and doing that is kind of like if they saw like Motley Crue when the Tommy Lee, you know, upside down drums, crazy. Yeah. But then he did the TV show, and he was trying. I mean, you see the clip on YouTube where he's trying to join the drum squad at college, and he couldn't make it at first. But meanwhile, there's, you know, Moscow's raving about him. He's you know, going like maniac drummer. There's different levels of drumming for different things.
Oh God, yeah.
So, but I'm saying, but for people that aren't drummers, and I know very little about drumming, it's a huge thing to jump into a situation like that, like you did. I mean, and it can be exciting too on a level, because it's like that doesn't happen all the time, and there's not a lot of drummers that can, you know, make that change.
Yeah, well, and believe me, I'm the first to admit that there would be a lot of context for me to probably jump into as a drummer, where I'd be like, oh boy, I'm way like out of my depth here. Right. You know, so right, but yeah, no, you're exactly right. So it's knowing this, if for all musicians out there, the name of the game is being prepared. Like, that's why people say, like, practice your rudiments and do your homework and like get good at your fundamentals so that you have some kind of sporting chance if some interesting opportunity arrives. From there, you develop like the most important, I think, you know, sort of group is attribute is being able to really listen. You need to develop your ears and learn how to listen to the musicians that you're playing with. That is a massive component of, I think, all the bands that I play with, in particular, you know, Dresden Dolls and Radiator King and Violent Femmes and that sort of thing, is that element of like, you're not just tuned out in your own little world, noodling away, whatever. You're like right there with the band, listening to each other. Yeah. So those two things, you know, and obviously it helped that I, you know, had been a fan and was familiar with, you know, a general swath of their music and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it also, I mean, it was, you know, new for them too. They didn't really know how I was going to be. I remember I was like a little too exuberant. I used to get so hyped playing Gimme the Car that I remember on our first Australian tour. And I was just like, you know, because to me, people might look at me and be like, this dude needs to take a large dose of chill and just relax. But music is such a powerful outlet to me and to so many people too. And I, again, came up with that area where it's like you celebrate the release. And so having the opportunity to play a song that I love, like Gimme the Car on stage at the Femmes. And I was like, just going for it. And I like at one point in like the breakdown section, I like kicked my snare drum over and it sort of freaked Gordon out. And he came to me after the show and was like, what, are you not getting enough attention over there? And I was like, oh, wow, no, he's like completely misreading this. He thought I was doing that to like, be like, well, look at me. And I was just like, I know, I'm like, I fucking love you guys. And I love this band. And I'm just like in it, that I'm like, that's what's kind of flowing out of me. So in a way that was like, you know what I'm saying? It was like
the guy in the wedding video was like doing that thing with the thing.
Well, no, because that dude's really showboating.
I know, I'm saying that's what he thought it was. It was pretty funny.
He thought that, yeah, he thought it was, and I was just like, no, because he's not looking at going like, yeah, I know this is some classic shit we wrote, huh? Pretty fucking rad. He's just like doing his thing. And to a certain degree, those guys were feeling sort of like, maybe this is like a little rote at this point for them. They needed some freshness to kind of come back in.
I think you think fresh blood probably really helped give it some life to the band.
Yeah, it definitely did. And they were the first ones. Well, yeah, you know what I mean? And I wanted to really specifically communicate to them that I was like absolutely sort of like fresh for this. I was not coming in with any kind of preconceived notions other than that I wanted to see that project succeed. And so I dove in. And the funny thing was that I found myself in a similar situation when I joined Violent Femmes that I do when I join any number of sort of like up and coming bands, where I was like helping them get like their social media. I consolidated all their fan Facebook pages and got them a band run Facebook page and later an Instagram page so that we could put out band announcements. We put together like a merchandising team for like old people that were involved with the Dresden Dolls. We got like t-shirts printed up, told them about Record Store Day, kind of was like going like, all right, I know you guys have been like kind of, they hadn't really worked together since about 2000. It had been about 13 or 14 years at the time that I joined, since Violent Femmes had their last like blowout fight in the studio recording this like Gnarls Barkley cover. Do you know what I mean? This is like all public. Everybody knows that there was like a lot of stuff that happened. You dig what I'm saying? So it was like they were kind of coming back into this a little bit, and rightfully so, a little cautious, a little, wary of like things spinning out of control, because like whatever tensions can flare. And they were just like really they put a lot of trust and faith in themselves and in me as the new guy, that we could like maintain a balance enough to get some decent work done.
They were also in a weird spot coming in. They needed it because they were competing against they were dealing with their old legacy. They're always going to deal with their old legacy album. There wasn't a huge album. It's always going to be like, I wish they would do that one. So they're always going to be in that one spot where, their best is always going to be compared on such a level that a lot of bands don't get. You usually get it, but not to that level. That's, so, and then getting back together and then having old issues because, touring, what I'm saying? So coming in fresh and doing new music and bringing new life into it, music is healing. It's like it's a creative force. So that's what I was going into. Yeah. And those guys, I think it was great when you came in because I think it gave them fresh breath. And I think that's why they're still doing stuff, which is great to see, you know what I mean? So, I wish all those guys, and I feel fortunate too, that throughout the different, bands that I've come in and out of, I've been lucky enough to like basically maintain like pretty good relationships with people, like, even when things like hit sort of like a rocky point and that kind of thing. So, and I'm glad to see the bands like World Inferno, Friendship Society too. I played with those guys for a couple of years, and that was when they were kind of hitting an interesting low where members were like, they were losing members and sort of momentum was kind of slowing. So rejoining that, it's nice to get to work with people when you feel this, like sort of a sense of like, camaraderie and like, all right, let's get this thing going. Let's get this thing I guess I thrived with it. I mean, I got like kind of addicted to that feeling with my experience with the Dresden Dolls, with Amanda. It's just so exhilarating. It's like almost even at times kind of like even more fun than like just the moment of success where you can look up and you're like one of those guys that does those TV shows. They come and they fix the restaurant turnkey. You're like, what's that guy? Talk about? It's like now Gordon Ramsay is nice too, but the guy, the Nelson guy comes in.
The boss, whatever, the kitchen boss. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Come in, you're like you're the tech or whatever before in the studio, and afterwards you take your wig off. You're like telling me why you're here. All the things wrong in the meeting. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I'll talk to the producers. That's a new show.
Yeah,
band.
That'd be hilarious. Band boss. We're going to do it.
Sign me up.
That is awesome. But so, with all these things you're doing, it feels like you're almost like this. Like you're everything we do in life for most of us that we can. You want to always keep building off of it, and all these different projects you're doing. You're strengthening your skills, like you said, and you've got a lot now because you've been doing so many things. It feels almost like you're preparing to be ready to do like this super album with a super group of like. I've never heard of this before because the percussion goes here. Like it feels like you have so many different things now in your tool belt that you've done.
Yeah.
That you're building up.
Yeah. Some, I mean, I don't know. I certainly won't try to like overstate it and be like, look at the amazing, insane career.
No,
I mean, there's
saying,
like people with like
interesting artistic point of view. You have a lot of different angles that you can present something,
Yeah, like definitely.
So, how did you come about having to build your own percussion when you did Ghost with Trent?
That was a really fun thing too. And that actually kind of built off of,
that's what I'm saying. It's on a piece. It feels it's very creative. It's very,
and that actually came out of, bits and pieces of stuff that I had done way back in the day, early days with Dresden Dolls. Kind of wanting to incorporate, I'd been a fan of instruments that I know about and stuff like that and all their weird kind of industrial kind of stuff like that. And so wanting to incorporate a lot of those found materials. Basically what happened was, the Dresden Dolls, we had done 31 shows with 9 Inch Nails in 2005, which was an incredible experience to see just how that production ran. So off the back of that, I wound up getting an email from Trent in 2007.
How was the audience reacting to that? Because it's same but different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I tell you, this harsh contrast is when we did the tour the following year with Panic at the Disco. And those kids fucking hated us. They were like, what the hell is this arty farty bullshit? They just had no use for us whatsoever. Our fans were getting like in fist fights and stuff like that. It was like really bizarre. The Nine Inch Nails crowd, much to our delight, was far more open, and we wound up like tripling the size of our fan base from that tour. We found a very sympathetic and open, intelligent, excited audience that was like, not what we're expecting, but this is interesting. All right, keep going, you two. What is this? And people seem to really find some, because that definitely came from a similar world. So that was like a very encouraging experience doing that Nine Inch Nails tour. We owe Trent Reznor a lot for
Trent
that.
Especially back then, we're very opening and very empathetic towards the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you guys, Amanda's lyrics are also very open to the world,
Yeah.
So I think that this was very similar point too, not sonically maybe as much, but lyrically there was very much of a empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Well, it's music, for short, like created by people who were, I think, felt themselves to be outsiders. So automatically you're getting all these kind of unconscious boxes getting checked, going like, yep, freak, weirdo, like, so that was, I think probably on the table pretty blatantly and stuff. So that wound up being a very good pairing in that way. So building off of that, and I would, during the solos or whatever, moments of the show, I was incorporating Nine Inch Nails drum parts. I would play the drum beat from Eraser off the Downward Spiral, like in the half jack opening solo or whatever, various things. And there was points when Amanda would jump up from her piano and come over and start smashing my drum kit with my China cymbal. And it was like pretty off the hook. But Trent obviously saw something that he enjoyed about the band, and from what I was told about my drumming. So I got an invitation in the fall of 2007 to come out. And it was really interesting speaking with him on the phone, because he basically was trying to reimagine Nine Inch Nails, and in particular the live show, where he kind of said, I'd like to develop like a musical suite with kind of movable components that I can shift around night to night during the show to keep things a little bit more fresh. He said, I want to kind of up the level of the musicianship. I'm sort of like, I've had my years of doing like angry guys, like smashing gear on stage. That was all kinds of fun, but I want to do something different now. Right. So the idea behind Ghosts was really to basically improvise and come up with all these various soundscapes, which then they later took on tour on the Lights in the Sky tour. They wound up playing one of the compositions that I wrote with them. I think it was Ghost 19, and Josh Freese is there playing a lot of the percussion, like the Poland Spring water bottles. And there's a little percussion station set up where Trent is banging on shit with hammers and chains and whatever. And that was pretty exciting to see, because there was like 60 tracks or something like on that first Ghost thing. So the fact that they took one of the ones I worked on with, that was a kind of exciting thing to see them implement that live, as he had been saying from that fall 2007, like about a year and a half later or whatever it was.
Well, especially it's a song that's kind of got a lot to, it's not like someone's going to pick it up and you're going to walk by and see him on a tree with an acoustic guitar singing that song. That's a commitment to learn that song with the whole show. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we sit down and we're going to strum it out a little thing, a ditty.
Yeah, it was great. So basically the way that it worked when I got to his studio was, he said, all right, I thought like a fun art project for the day would be to have you build the drum kit out of whatever you want, and then we'll improvise later tonight. I was like, cool. And he's like, go, you're free. I'm going to be in the room mixing today. Go with Brett and get whatever stuff you want. So I went to SIR Rehearsal Studios and got a kick drum and 3 snare drum stands. And then I went to Home Depot and got a bunch of like aluminum metal and chains and wood dowels and weird stuff. And then I came back to his house and I scavenged around his home where he had been doing a bunch of remodeling. And that's where I got that huge 50-gallon galvanized like trash can and like weird mallets. And man, he had every kind of instrument from like sitar to like, your like most basic guitar pedal in, pianos and upright basses, and just open like floor space, just covered with instruments and stuff like that, just to be on hand. So that was really cool. And I wound up building this weird kind of junk drum kit. And like I was saying with the Dresden Dolls, one of the things I had made back in 2002 was this kind of percussion tray with like an upturned splash cymbal that I had bolted a length of chain into to kind of get this like a very hard kind of grinding sound. So I basically took that idea, built a snare drum out of like a cookie sheet with a length of chain on it, and et cetera, et cetera. And later that night, they said, okay, we're going to give you a click in the headphones. And Trent said to me, play whatever comes into your head. Trying to make it sound like a hippie drum circle, but just go. You have total freedom. Just go do your thing. And I was like, you got it, boss. So I just went in the room and in came the click, kind of like a sort of medium slow tempo. And really the only preparation I had done, because it was such a general kind of like, hey, why don't you just come out and we'll fuck around and see what happens kind of thing, was like, well, let me just like listen really kind of like what kind of beats and grooves like that wind up on his records. What are the kind of rhythms and sounds that turn him on? And I realized that he's got this real kind of like funk, almost kind of like Prince influenced kind of thing. At least, you know, no, like funk, like Prince, like Kiss, like slow, deep.
Okay. Yeah.
Like there's a lot of like sex and swagger in Nine Inch Nails beats. They're slinky. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's all that. There are moments like that for sure, but that was kind of a interesting perspective to listen to his music, at least up until, you know, 2006 at that point, of the kind of stuff. So I just kind of tried to improvise grooves like within that realm. And I came back in the room and he said, great sounds, great beats, go do some more. So I went back in the room and I did another few minutes. And then the next day sat there with Alan Mulder and Atticus Ross. And we were like, they started mixing and I was like sitting there in this kind of dazed dream, like, holy shit state, or like, I can't, this is amazing. Like my drumming's winding up on like this weird experimental Nine Inch Nails record. And I got to say something about it. Like, cause I was like, it was a really exciting chance in a way, because it wasn't just like, all right, well, here, just sit down at a 4-piece drum kit. He was like, go build something bizarre and just let your mind go free on it. And so I thought to myself, all right, well, if I have any kind of say of like, was my input going to be with a Nine Inch Nails record? I want to bring that shit back to some old school industrial grindy, banging some fucking metal shit together. And that's exactly what wound up. And they wound up taking that on tour. So that was completely
amazing.
fucking amazing.
You could come up with sounds in a day, because I imagine there's a lot of bad sounds. You hit certain stuff. Not everything sounds good when it's metal when you hit it. You're like, clonk. You're like, oh, nobody should hear that again. You know what I mean? To be able to take that and then build it and put together and sound good and then do it, like the turnaround to make something that creatively work.
Yeah.
That quickly too is kind of amazing.
Well, you know, and their mic setup was super simple, and those sounds are like not really affected. Like they basically had 2 PZM contact mics on the wall, and that's it. Like that's how they captured my drum performance. And then they kind of edited like to the length of the thing. But I was basically completely unaware, unbeknownst to me. Adrian Belew had been in from King Crimson, had been in the week before and laid down this like wall of insane guitar noise. So then I heard this beat that I was playing, and then they dumped in all of Adrian's like guitar chaos. And it was like, oh man, this is like insane. So it was just really fascinating just to see. I mean, it's very quiet. It's almost like being in a library in a way, like Atticus is there kind of typing away and editing away, and Alan Mulder sort of like thinking, and Trent is like doing 10 million things on his laptop and whatever stuff like that, and they're just like making these incredible records together and stuff. And so you know, to be part of that process and see that up close, having been an inquisitive fan, going like, wow, I wonder what it's like. It was incredible, you know, and they're a really solid team. And not last but not least, like Alessandro Cortini, who is Trent's kind of like right hand man and sort of synth guy and, you know, studio collaborator for many years, was there too. And he was like a big part of the process too. So it was great to see that meeting of the minds on that. What at that time was a pretty, you know, groundbreaking record. That was the year 2007 and 8 when both Nine Inch Nails and Radiohead released their first like crowd-funded or pay what you want albums. Radiohead put out In Rainbows, and Nine Inch Nails released Ghosts as this kind of like multi-tiered thing. That's when he broke from the record label. So that was you know, and Ghost got nominated for a Grammy for like packaging or something like that too, which was like really cool, because that was an incredible, like the deluxe edition of that record was amazing. So, you know, that was really exciting to be part of that.
He's really, I think he's underrated also as a producer. I think there's levels that he's got. Like, you're like, where'd you get that from? Like, where'd you just, you know, sounds and stuff. He's on the level, you know, that
without
people kind of just put him. He's a guy from Nine Inch Nails that did, you know, you're like, no. Like in the studio, what he does is just, it's like another job. You know, it's just totally different.
Yeah.
Um,
Trent has great ears too. Like, and I love like the dynamic range goes everything from just sounds like a screaming jet engine down to like whisper quiet, just like, dragging like a hair across a fucking mouse's nose or something, whatever. It's just like the itsy bitsiest, quiet, most delicate thing. So to find somebody in that kind of electronic and aggressive music realm that knows
you're
how
right.
to
It feels,
explore those colors is really
to me,
cool.
his sounds feel, and I say this in a good way, it feels intimate and it feels dry, not like a lot of overly echoey reverb on some points. It's very dry.
Yeah.
It's very, in effect, you're right there. You hear it. It's like, but it's not overdone.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and it's very close to you. You're not screaming, or like I said, the dynamic's still together.
Right. So how could I
But
not be attracted to like working with projects like in that kind of thing? Like
right,
that's what I mean. People that have that X factor, it's like I've got about like 75% ish of the idea, if that, of like what I want to do. How do we fill in the rest? That's like, you want me in a band, man, that's going to be like the hook. That's going to be like, okay, let's go, and like, I want to help figure that out and be a part of that process. That's where like the fun is. Because it also sets you free to like completely cut loose. And you notice time and time again, we see all of the chains and limitations and sort of inhibitions that we lay on ourselves. You get into the studio with people and it's like part of it is almost like being like a psychologist. You see where people feel afraid to express themselves, afraid to embrace their own power, afraid to fail, afraid to try something and look foolish. And it's amazing being able to strip all of that shit layer by layer away. So you get to the point of somebody with a creative seed of an idea that nothing is standing in the way of it. You just charge forth fearlessly, but with know-how and with intention. And you create this incredible thing together that didn't exist before. You bring it into being. So that's, again, it's, you sort of go like, why does Brian wind up in all these kind of weird bands? That's why that's a hugely attractive, or not you specifically. No, but you know what I'm saying? Like, why am I not just playing in like whatever standard band X? Because that's a hugely important part of the process for me. And I love on a personal level, seeing other human beings experience that. It's so joyful and so exhilarating,
it's evident watching it. That's what it's either your creative force or you're in the witness relocation program for musicians, and they got to keep moving around for your own safety. But I'm leaning to the first one. That's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that being said, and then now the past years, but not really a kind of a lockdown. But it's also another creative time. You've been doing a lot of creative different projects, and then where is this happening? The Dresden dolls are getting their machine ready. You guys are kind of getting ready to do something. Where are you at with Dresden dolls and your other projects you're doing? Like everything, like take it apart.
Well, so I'll start with basically my life in short from COVID was don't cry, get your shit together. That was my mantra. So I was like, all right, lockdown, fine. That's reality. There's nothing I'm going to do like go like poor me. It's like everybody is in this fucking boat. So the first fucking thing I did mentally was go, what do I need to make my home setup better? So I got a new little webcam. Hopefully this looks good. And a few little studio like outboard gear and sort of programs to help me with music editing and recording. And then started basically just putting the word out there. And via social media, when I get a project, I like to sort of film the process for people too, because in a way, I feel like that's kind of like emboldens them to go like, all right, well, this guy that he's working with or girls working with doing it, whatever, blah, blah, maybe I can like actually do something and maybe I'll write to Brian and like, we can do a project. And it's amazing to see like the amount of people that were like, yeah, I don't need to like sweat this. Let me get creative. Like bust out my guitar, bust out my piano, whatever. And before you know it, all these different projects start rolling in, and that then begets more creative work. So that's an exciting thing for people to see, not to feel beat down by a situation, but take charge of it and do something for themselves. Then I had basically been soliciting my friend Adam Silvestri, who is in New York for many years like myself. I was like, try this Los Angeles deal, because things on the East Coast have gotten pretty difficult if you're like in an up and coming band. Like the whole pay to play thing has gotten a lot more difficult, blah, blah, blah. So I found that for myself. I had found a really generous and embracing community out here of super supportive, like, people that go to shows, everybody who's in bands is very willing to help each other out and that kind of thing. So I was saying like, Adam, it's been going pretty well for me. And if you want to keep Radiator King going, try relocating, because he was feeling sort of like at wit's end with his situation. So he moved out to Los Angeles in January. And from there, I was like, let's get a band together with some new members and set a date and go do a live stream. So we put a band together with my friend, Alex Burke, amazing keyboard player who just did Bob Dylan's live stream for his 80th birthday, which was amazing. And my friend Art Santora. Art was a guy, I say my friend, I literally met the guy 2 months ago. I went up to a session at El Dorado Studio where my friend Kaylin was recording. Art was assistant engineering. I chatted with Art for about 3 fucking minutes. And I was like, hey man, what's up? Yeah, my name is Brian. Yeah, I'm friends with Kaylin, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you work here too? Cool. Like, what do you do? Oh, I'm in a band. I play like 9 instruments, including like dobro and slide guitar and pedal steel and bass and blah, blah. I was like, hey, I'm putting a band together. It's called Radiator King. We're doing a live stream. Do you want to like join the band? And he's like, yeah, I'm totally game. I was like, awesome. So I put him in touch with Adam. I'm seriously, man, within about 5 minutes, I went outside for just a quick like breath of fresh air, chatted with Art, went back in, texted Adam, put those two in touch. Both of those were like, then they were both kind of Boston guys too. So it was like, oh, you listen to Converge? Oh, you used to hang out at this one and blah, blah, blah. Amazing. So the 4 of us got together, basically said like, let's get a live stream happening. Alex had a connection at the legendary East West Studios where, you know, Frank Sinatra and the Rolling Stones and the Beach Boys recorded Pet Sounds and all that kind of stuff. So we booked a room there and did a live stream on my birthday this year. Learned like a 45-minute set, and the band crushed. It was awesome. And it was so fun. And all of a sudden Adam is going, not just Adam, but even Art and Alex were like, it feels so good to have regular band practice again. And blah, 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 blah. So that was exciting. And since then, the Radiator King live stream, live from East West, is getting ready to go up August 18th on Spotify and all the digital mediums. And we're going to be recording some new songs with Ted Hutt, I think, for this fall, which is great. So, you know, it's amazing to be back in like a fully functional working, like 4 people contributing. And we've also flipped the script on the way that we work. Traditionally, people would just learn the songs that Adam wrote. What Ted has now been saying was like, that's great, but you guys have been there and done that. And now that you've got these 4 creative minds in the band, start completely fresh. And so Adam's just going to start bringing in his lyric book, and we're just going to start writing music fresh together with everybody. And we've already like pushed the boundaries of like where the music generally comes from. Adam was very, I think, used to the kind of template of writing from a kind of like bluesy Americana kind of standpoint. And we're pushing that like far, far past the boundaries of just kind of cowboy chords and things like, not that was strictly, that's what it was, but that's very much where his songwriting would start. And now we're just absolutely starting from like where the lyrics and the emotional, sort of like space coming from, and how can we surround and support that with music. So this is, again, a really kind of adventurous time, you know, for me in terms of like creatively. Then on top of that, I've been teaching all kinds of like online and in-person drum lessons, which has been wonderful. So thankfully to all the, you know, Zoom and Skypes out there, it's like I've been able to have lessons with people in Europe and Australia and England, and it's, you know, and all across the United States, which has been beautiful. I love teaching drums. And again, to like, especially oftentimes working with kids is really fun too, because that sense of freedom in play is so prominent. And to see somebody feel proud of themselves for progressing and things like that is
really
really
energy
wonderful.
is very captivating too. So I'm sure it's very inspiring for somebody starting out.
And it keeps me certainly like on my toes. I started working about 6 or 8 months ago with a drum student named Robert, who is only 10 and had never really played drums before. And it was great. So we were telling stories and like punctuating the stories with drumming. So I wasn't like, okay, you have to hold it like that. You have to hold it like that. Cause I hated that stuff when I was that age too. It made me have an adverse reaction to drumming when my father, at first, when I was like 6 or 7, it was like, all right, hold it like this and do just that. No, not like that, like this. And I was like, this kid just needs to have some fun. And now he's playing songs, and we're playing car songs. Robert was like, requested to play Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up on the last, and it was hilarious. and he was drumming right along to that beat, man, stuff like that. So it's like, you know, we're playing all kinds of music together. So that's great, you know, see kids' minds open up, and we're playing, you know, the Cars and Rage Against the Machine and all kinds of like music across the board. And then beyond there, tying in with like the online and remote learning has been the influx of just independent recording projects. So that's what I try to post on social media too, so people can see a bit of the process. Maybe they feel a little bit more of like an inroad.
And we will put everyone who's watching, we'll go all the links from all of your shows, all your projects underneath, so they can go individually and kind of check out all these things out.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Your links, your YouTube, your Instagram, everything. And
great.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
The last thing, we were going to do with Dresden Dolls. What's going on?
Oh, yes, of course. And sorry. So the Dresden Dolls. So I just spoke to Amanda yesterday on the phone at length, and you know, both of us are extremely excited to get back to work. We started talking about making a new record in 2016 when we were doing the shows at Coney Island and in Boston and stuff like that. And just time and schedules and like all the sort of ins and outs that we need to kind of get in order. Yeah. You know, and our record contract is like 17 years old or something like that at this point. It's just like ancient horse and buggy contracts. It's like, you know, like the butter churn clause needs to be taken out. It's just stupid. It's, you know what I mean? So there's a lot, but yet we still owe Road Records contractually another 4 Dresden Dolls records, which I'm fine with. We signed a 7-album deal, which like a lot of bands did. We were a new band. Right. We licensed them our first record, and then we released another 2. Yeah. And then now we still owe them another 4, which when I signed that contract with the man, I was like, cool, 10 records. I don't fucking care. Like Dresden Dolls is my life. Let's do this shit. I'm like in this for life. Like 7 albums. Cool. When's the next, you know, tour? Like, let's get going. So to me, I'm like, not a big deal. A lot of people balk at that and go like, oh my God, but I'm ready to go. I would love to record another.
You can do like Frank Zappa did and take a long album, just break it apart.
Just whatever. You know what I mean? No, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, definitely. But like, I also was like undaunted at the time too, because I also felt and saw in real time the effect that Roadrunner was having on the band's spread and the amount of kids that were getting turned on to the Dresden Dolls because of the promotion. And I was really thankful and happy about that. I know that a lot of sort of media coverage around Amanda was about like the sort of negative facets of Roadrunner and this and all that kind of shit. But I mean, there were so many dedicated people on that staff, on that street team. And I mean like kids in random ass towns all over the world, like on little Roadrunner freebie street teams that like helped promote the Dresden Dolls. So when we do another record, if it's for Roadrunner and that all works out, fine. If Roadrunner drops us because they don't have the funds or they don't want to give us the big, you know, record advance or whatever like that, fine. We have plenty of infrastructure at this point to release a new record, but there's still a lot of writing to do. So the main thing that Amanda was saying to me was like, I just haven't had the time. And she's now stuck in New Zealand since last March because of COVID. Now the whole Delta variant bullshit, blah, 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 blah. All the countries are locking down. There's this and that. It's just always like the ebb and flow. A friend of mine's sister who works at the CDC basically said they're looking at summer of 2022. As like, hopefully, so another year, but I'm sort of unbothered at this point. Like as much as I would love to see things happen, Amanda and I, you know, as a sort of like a desire to like connect with our fans, we'll do as much as we possibly can from this great distance. You know, in this short time too, I recorded tracks for one of her records. She did a bushfire relief album where she did a couple of songs by Midnight Oil, et cetera, et cetera. We did a Muppet movie cover of awesome. I'm Gonna Go Back There Someday, which Gonzo sings. That was also a charity event. Which we donated the proceeds to for frontline workers and stuff like that. And, you know, around Halloween last year, amidst when I was doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show live stream with Tim Curry and all of that, which was like insane. Amanda and I got together for like a sort of 20th anniversary sort of celebration and did an online thing. So at best, if we're not able to actually get together and do shows, which we might, if I can get to New Zealand at some point in the next like 4 to 5 months, we'll at least do something online around Halloween. You know what I mean? Just to like
I just think the fact that you guys are at a point now where, you know, you guys are together and there's ebb and flow, and when it works at the right time for you both, Dresden Dolls will do something. And then when life changes for both you guys on the same page, it just changes. It doesn't end.
That's how it's always been.
Important. That's that's a band that should always exist when it's right and never break up because of it should just take breaks because
definitely.
And that's what more the question is. So what's up with so you guys are on a point where creative, the creative juices are going and moving forward. That's all anyone can ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. You know what I mean? I stepped away from the band in 2007 for several damn good reasons. Right. Which are pretty much all public. And I was like, everyone was exhausted. Amanda and I were like not getting along well. And it basically had to like sort of like toxify the thing. And I was like, this is just going to destroy itself. And that's stupid. So I'm going to stop.
That's what I'm saying to you. Like that stuff out there. But as a person, as a fan, like saying, to me, the takeaway is you're in a good spot. She's been really busy, in a good spot. And now everyone can kind of come back and go, let's do this when we got time. Because when we do it right, it's a great creative force. You do it not right. And it takes now the band is not a cookie cutter band. So it's got to be at its best when it's a creative force. Otherwise, you guys can't. It's not a band where you can kind of put out a good rock album like the one before, because that's not the kind of band you are.
Sure.
You guys are,
moving
that
forward.
Dynamic is needed. Yeah, you can't fake it.
Exactly too. And we also don't have to do things in such a crazy, there was like a real pressure cooker element too, because, it's like any band who's like kind of like getting more and more famous and exposure and whatever, and the momentum is going, you want to capitalize on the moment while the, strike while the iron's hot.
Bands back then too, though. Back then, every band, even no matter what genre you're in, there was rules and it was different, But
what I'm saying is that now we're actually afforded the ability to tour in a more humane schedule. There's like not, and that's the position that Violent Femmes were in when I joined them too. Both Brian and Gordon were a little bit like, is it going to be like the 90s where it's like scary and oppressive schedule wise, and it's like and there's like 9 million people telling us like what to do every minute of the day, and it's it was not like that at all too. And now Amanda and I have fortunately kind of made it to that point too, where we can kind of decide. One of Amanda's main concerns for herself is like childcare. She's trying to think like, what am I going to do when I go on tour with my, but there's people, and it's amazing to see how many bands, even like the old school, like punk bands that are out there that all have kids, and they go off and do tours and summer festivals and stuff like that. So where there's a will, there's a way, and Dresden Dolls will definitely come back.
The rock bands now look like family vacation bands. And it's kind of awesome, actually on a new level, because it's healthier, because the bands everyone's feeling better about being on the road and being together and creative. And, it's not just whatever was going on before.
So it's good. So there's hope, man. So we'll be doing lots of stuff too. So that's my main message to people out there too. Like during all this lockdown stuff, get your resources together, stay positive, and do something meaningful to yourself. Don't blame and pout and moan about like the situation. Bad stuff is happening all the time. You can focus on that. But if you can, see what redeeming and wonderful things you do have around you to make something important to you happen. And then get the gumption up, get off your asses, and like, let's go do something. Because now that I'm seeing more and more of my friends get involved like that, everyone's kind of going like, oh, I'm feeling I'm in such a good mood, and taking agency over your own life, even in these crazy times where like COVID and all that stuff is completely unpredictable. The worst thing that you can do is get in a headspace where you just feel totally powerless. Do you know what I mean? So
I do. It's hard. You watch people, and then you hear other people doing it. So even if you feel okay about it, the oppression of other people doing it, just keeps piling on you. It's hard to be that one strong. But there are many. Then we are great in number, and so it's just about finding those people. And then that's the beautiful thing, is that ripple effect. Man, you find one crazed motherfucker that just doesn't give a shit, who goes like, I don't care, I'm doing this thing anyway. Come on, are you with me or no? And then I see it happen with Radiator King. It was like, get out of here. Let's make shit happen. That's how you have to look at it. That's the strongest thing that I learned from like the DIY punk thing. I remember my mom going like, what is that crazy noise? I used to listen to that Minor Threat live at the 930 Club thing. And she's like, what are you even listening to? And I was like, if I just had you don't even know the important messages that are coming through this music, and like the actions of these people where the world was against them. They felt like there was no point, like no kind of career or whatever like that was ever going to manifest out of that. But the lesson from like, you will be amazed at how much you can actually do for yourself, especially if you find a like-minded friend that you get out there. And before you know it, the situation that you thought totally sucked is actually
not that bad anymore. And maybe you might even have like a drop of fun along the way.
I could have said it better. Or with that energy, not without medication.
Well, that's all right. Coffee helps.
I've only had half a cup today, so you have me on that one.
I need to go get some more. Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, man.
Super creative. I'll have you back another time. We have more stuff going on. All of your shows, all of your links, everything you have, people can check it right underneath the video. Support him on all his projects. So you are taking out, you are up for more projects if people reach out to you for drumming or anything else, right? All right,
absolutely.
So you guys heard it.
You betcha. Thank you so much for having me today, brother.
All right, man. I want to thank you. You have a good day.
You too. Okay.